Wowza. Okay, you definitely weren't kidding about this being a deep dive.
Oh,
Marine mechanic world, here we come, huh? You've got like career pamphlets, websites, even AI interview stuff. Someone's serious.
it's a good sign, though, don't you think? Shows you're thinking about, like, the whole picture, not just fixing engines, but how to actually land a job, right?
Mm.
Using all the tech and stuff.
Absolutely. So, massive pile of info here. Let's break it down. What does a marine mechanic even DO all day? Besides, the obvious boat stuff.
Haha, right. It's a bit more than just outboard motors, that's for sure. Think of it this way, they're like doctors, but for boats. Diagnosing problems, routine checkups, even emergency surgery when the ocean throws a wrench in things.
Doctor for boats. I like that.
Huh?
And speaking of wrenches, the work environment descriptions here are wild. Cramped spaces, loud noises, crazy weather. You need a strong stomach for this gig.
You're telling me. Definitely not your average desk job, that's for sure. But one thing that keeps popping up is the teamwork aspect.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So it's not just you alone in the engine room, right? You've got the captain, the deck crew, even tech support back on land sometimes. It's a whole team effort to keep things afloat, especially if there's rough seas or surprise repairs.
Makes sense. Got to be able to communicate and work together when you're out there. But let's be real. Everyone's wondering about the job outlook before they ditch their day job.
100%. And the research actually looks really promising. That Bureau of Labor Statistics thing, they're predicting like a 6% growth rate over the next 10 years. That's way faster than a lot of other jobs.
That IS good news.
Any info on the whole salary situation? Asking for a friend, of course.
Of course. It seems to be around 40 to 60,000 a year,
Right.
generally speaking. But the interesting thing is experience and those fancy certifications, those can really boost your earning power. One article specifically called out those marine engine mechanic and diesel engine certifications. Like, those are the hot tickets.
Good to know. Now, you've highlighted RoleCatcher a bunch in these materials. Seems like they've got a whole toolkit for maritime job hunters. Yeah, they do. Resume builders, interview practice, all powered by AI and targeted specifically at like shipyard jobs and stuff. Pretty cool.
And that's what I call using technology to your advantage. Imagine having your resume analyzed by AI, picking out the perfect keywords for those maritime hiring managers, and practicing your interval answers. Game changer.
It's wild how tech is shaking things up, even for hands-on jobs like this one. But,
Yeah.
as I was going through all this, something else really jumped out at me.
What's that?
The career path for a marine mechanic, it's not always a straight line. Yeah, you can climb the ladder, entry level to senior mechanic, but some people get really niche with it.
Niche like how?
Like one article talked about this mechanic who started on yachts, all fancy marinas and sunshine, right? Then they ended up specializing in those big commercial fishing boats, total 180. More demanding, way higher stakes, but apparently super rewarding.
That's so cool. You can really chart your own course in this field, it seems. But I imagine there are some common threads like skills or personality traits that make someone successful in this line of work. Right?
Definitely. Your research actually had a lot to say about that. One career guide, I think it was, really stressed problem-solving skills,
Yeah.
being adaptable, keeping a cool head under pressure, that kind of thing. And when you're dealing with, like, engines in the middle of the ocean, right, being resourceful is kind of key. Actually, one of these articles had this crazy story about a mechanic who had to fix a bilge pump while, get this, dodging an angry octopus. Talk about thinking on your feet.
Okay, that's amazing and kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I guess a good sense of humor is helpful in this job, huh? So how does one even become a marine mechanic? What's the typical training?
Well, you usually need a high school diploma. That's the baseline. But then it's all about hands-on stuff, trade schools, apprenticeships, that kind of thing. One guide I was looking at was really big on programs that get you experience with diesel engines. Specifically, the Yanmar 6LY series, they're everywhere on bigger ships, apparently.
The MR6LY, got it.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here. Specialized knowledge is key, but you also need that real-world experience, right?
Yeah,
Hence the apprenticeships.
exactly. You're basically learning the ropes from the pros, the ones who've seen it all. Those salty dogs must have some stories.
I bet they do.
Oh,
Speaking of seen it all, the variety of work environments in this research is wild. It's not just fixing yachts in the Bahamas, huh?
not even close. Think fishing boats, cargo ships, even shipyards and dry docks. One mechanic went from pampering private yachts to working on those research vessels. Can you imagine?
Wow, that's a huge shift. So you're not just a mechanic, you're kind of a part of whatever world that boat operates in. Okay, so paint me a picture. Typical day for a marine mechanic. What's on the to-do list?
It's a mix, honestly. Some days it's all routine engine checks, maintenance, that sort of thing. Other days, bam, you're in full problem-solving mode. Weird noises, system failures. Got to figure it out fast.
So you need to be organized and a bit of an adrenaline junkie.
100%. And remember that Yanmar 6LY engine I mentioned?
Yeah.
One article had this mechanic who spent days trying to figure out why it kept overheating. Turned out to be this tiny, almost invisible crack in the heat exchanger.
Oh, man. Talk about a needle in a haystack. You'd need some serious patience for this job.
For sure. But then you have those moments when you finally fix it, you know? That feeling of, I did it. That's got to be pretty rewarding.
That's getting a detective almost, right? Except the clues are greasy engine parts. Okay, shifting gears a bit here. I'm struck by how much technology keeps popping up in this research. We talked about AI and job hunting, but what about, like, actually doing the job? Is tech changing things up there too?
It's changing everything. Boats these days, they're practically computers with engines, electronics everywhere, digital systems, even hybrid and electric boats are starting to pop up. So those old school wrenches, they're not going away, but you got to know the digital stuff too.
So you're not just a mechanic anymore. You're almost like a computer tech too.
Pretty much. You got to be comfortable with diagnostic software, reading sensor data, all that. There was this really interesting article about something called predictive maintenance, basically using data to predict problems before they even happen.
Okay, that's next level. Instead of just reacting, you're staying one step ahead. How does that even work?
So picture this. You put these vibration sensors on the ship's main engine, right? Those sensors, they're collecting data constantly, how much the engine is vibrating, all that. And then software analyzes that data, and if there's even a tiny change, like a bearing starting to wear out, the software flags it.
Whoa. It's like the ship is telling you what's wrong before it even knows it's wrong.
Exactly. And it's not just engines. They can use sensors for everything. Fuel use, emissions, even how much the hull is flexing. It's all about making things run smoother, cheaper, and safer.
It's like the whole industry's getting a high-tech makeover. And marine mechanics are right there on the front lines, figuring it all out as they go.
And you know what's really interesting? This whole tech boom, it's not just changing how they do the job, but also where they do it.
What do you mean?
Think about it. With all this remote diagnosis stuff, you could potentially work from anywhere, right? Analyze data from your computer, troubleshoot problems remotely. One article even talked about augmented reality. Mechanics could basically see inside an engine room from miles away and walk someone through a repair.
Now that is wild. It seems like the possibilities are endless, especially as technology keeps blurring the lines between, like, the real world and the digital world. It really makes you think, about how tech is changing the game for marine mechanics. But amidst all that cool stuff, I kept noticing this other theme, the whole ethical, environmental side of things. Like, it's not just about the boat, it's about the planet too, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
One article really dove into the whole waste disposal problem. Use engine oil, batteries, all that nasty stuff. Can't just toss it overboard anymore.
Right.
What?
The ocean's not a garbage can. So
Right.
how are they dealing with that?
Well, the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, they're come up with stricter rules all the time, like way stricter limits on those sulfur emissions from ships. And that's forcing everyone to get creative, cleaner fuels, better engines, the whole 9 yards.
So it's not just about fixing stuff, it's about fixing it responsibly.
Mhm.
Are marine mechanics feeling this shift directly in their day-to-day work?
Oh, totally. One article talked about this mechanic who's like become the expert in retrofitting old boats with these exhaust cleaning systems, scrubbers they call them. Big demand for that now with those new IMO rules.
Fascinating. It's like a whole new specialty within the field. Okay, but what about the human side of all this? You mentioned ethical stuff. About the people actually working on these ships.
Yeah, a lot of the research touched on fair labor practices, making sure everyone's treated right, safe working conditions, reasonable hours. There's a big push now to fight back against, exploitation, abuse, all the stuff that's plagued the industry for too long.
It's easy to forget, when you're talking engines and tech, that there are real people behind it all. Their well-being, their rights. That's got to be a priority too.
Absolutely. And you know what? It might actually be the mechanics more than anyone who can make things better, because they're down there in the engine room, they see what's going on, they know the risks firsthand, they can really advocate for safety.
That's a powerful thought. They're not just fixing machines, they're looking out for each other too.
Hmm.
Okay, so big picture time. What do you think the future holds for the marine mechanic world?
Honestly, I think it's going to be a wild ride. This is not a career for someone who's afraid of change, that's for sure.
Yeah, you've got to be able to roll with the punches, get your hands dirty, and learn something new every day.
100%. But if you love a challenge, if the ocean calls to you,
Hmm.
and you like the idea of like using your brain and your hands to solve problems, then marine mechanic might be your dream job.
I love it. We've covered so much ground today, from the nitty-gritty of engines to, like, the future of the entire industry. So listeners, if any of this resonated with you, if you felt even a little spark of, "That's me,"
Yeah.
then don't ignore it. Dive into those resources, keep exploring, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see you out on the open water someday.